Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I am your host, Alan Moore, and today I'm super excited to have Amy Irvine, founder of Irvine Wealth Planning Strategies, on the show today. Amy is a total rock star and has been instrumental in helping get the XYPN Diversity Committee off the ground. Like many guests of the show and XYPN members in general, Amy's path started out on a typical succession planning path. However, after being told she couldn't roll out a service model to serve younger clients, she decided to split off and join another firm. She shares some of the issues that she had leaving, as apparently some custodians, Schwab in this instance, actually require that your prior boss approve you breaking away in order for you to stay on the Schwab platform, which at the last minute he decided not to do so, which left her in a really bad spot. She talks about that transition and what listeners need to be aware of before breaking away. Since then, Amy has seen amazing growth in her first 2 years in business, bringing on 43 clients in 2016, and has slowed a bit to adding 18 clients so far in 2017, recently crossing the 100 client mark in just her second year. She credits her previous work for this success, as she had to turn away so many people due to asset minimums at her old firms that she could now work with them, and a lot came back to work with her. Her husband works with her, but she's starting to realize she needs additional help, and we talked about what she's looking for and how she wants to structure a new virtual paraplanner hire. We talked at length about how you should avoid underpricing your services, which is a mistake that she made early on and is still paying the price for. Finally, Amy is well known in the XYPN community for her work as a mentor, and she talks about how all advisors can become a mentor, how to structure it, and what you can hope to accomplish. She says she gets just as much out of the relationship as her mentees and encourages all advisors to get involved. You can find any of the additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/119. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN Radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Amy. Hey, Amy, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being on.
Well, thanks for having me.
I'm really excited because I had a couple of various people reach out to me and let me know that I should have you on the show. So they nominated you, which is always fun, just because you've had such a cool career and are doing some really awesome things and growing really fast and have experienced growth pains and all of those things. So I'm excited to dig in. Again, I appreciate you taking the time. Just give me a little bit of an overview of sort of where the firm stands today. Where are you located? How many clients do you serve? Sort of overall fee structure. We'll dig into the details as we go, but sort of broad brushstroke of the firm today.
Well, I'm located in Corning, New York in the summer and fall, and I'm located in Parrish, Florida in the winter and spring, early spring. So I actually have an office location in Corning on Market Street, and I work out of pretty much virtually in Parrish. We just crossed right before the XYPN conference. We crossed the 100 client mark.
Congratulations.
So we did a little dance and then said, oh gosh, we need to get back to work. So
you can only dance for so long.
That's right. So we've grown quite considerably. I have been in the business for a long time. So I think once people heard that I had gone independent, they, started reaching out to me to learn a little bit more about the firm. And it's been a bit of a wild ride. I'm very excited about it, but we are, as you mentioned in the intro, experiencing some growing pains that we're trying to deal with right now.
So what year did you start the firm?
The Irvine Wealth Planning Strategies actually started in 2016. I spun off in 2015 from my prior firm and tried to form a partnership with a gentleman in Florida, actually. And it was pretty clear quickly that a partnership wasn't really what I should have been doing. And so we both recognized it pretty quickly. I helped him convert his business from a traditional broker-dealer, actually hybrid broker-dealer business into a fee-only business. And then we were making plans for me to spin off from that in 2016. So the business officially started in 2016, but I spun off in 2015.
Okay, so you are 2 years into the business, 2.5 years at most, and have 100 clients. That's just totally normal. I am kidding. For any listener out there, you've got to have some magic sauce to hit that 100 client mark in 2.5 years. So I'm excited to figure out what your magic sauce is. That's awesome.
Well, the magic sauce isn't all that great. It's not as pretty as it looks.
Tell me a little bit about sort of your career into financial planning. Have you always been in this career, or are you a career changer?
I'm not a career changer. So I graduated from college the first time in 1992, with a degree in accounting. And I did a very, very, very short stint working for a transit company that was local to the area I grew up in. And I knew that wasn't for me. It didn't have enough challenge for me, to be honest. And so I began looking pretty quickly for something that was more financial driven. And I found a job in a very small trust company called Steuben Trust Company in 1994. And that was, we got to do trust accounting, and we were working with estates, and this was before things are anywhere near what they are right now, where gifting maximums were in the $1 million mark. And so, the planning strategies behind that were much, much more frequent, especially with some of the local farmers, because they were so property heavy. So it was a great start to the career because it was in that fiduciary environment. I really got an understanding of, what our responsibilities were if we were in the financial services industry. But it didn't take me very long in that organization to see that I wasn't going to grow knowledge-wise or even, compensation-wise working in a small town. So, I looked for other opportunities, and I was a little, I would say, arrogant, thinking I knew more than I did, and really began to look outside the realm of just trust world, and fell into a job that was dealing with benefits. So I worked for a local union office, handling all their benefit plans, whether it was their health plan or their vacation plan or their pension plan or their, what we would call now, retirement savings plan. They called it the annuity fund back then. So I loved the work, but the union environment wasn't exactly, should I say, friendly. So I loved the work and started reaching out to another local trust company that had a benefits department that specifically focused on 401ks and money purchase pension plans and defined benefit plans. And they were sort of growing to do more. At that point in time, they really didn't have a ton of 401k employee directed plans. It was more, here's a fund that you can put your money into. And this was in 1996. And you don't think that 1996, you think about the technology of today and you think, well, 1996, that wasn't that long ago.
It really was 20 years.
We didn't, there were so many companies that did not have employees directing their funds, and they weren't daily, they couldn't log into their accounts and see what their daily balances were. And while I was there at that company, we just totally transitioned the business. And so every company became a daily value plan. We were doing open enrollment. We were providing some education. And one of the things that I loved to do was actually go out and do the open enrollment. That was huge to me. I loved being able to help people break down the barrier of education that's there about investments. So I kept having people come up to me and asking me questions after these open enrollment meetings about their kids' education and do I have enough life insurance and what if I become disabled? And one of my colleagues that worked for this trust company had gotten his CFP designation, didn't even work in the same department, but had gotten his CFP designation, and it piqued my interest. So I started looking into the program, and my alma mater that I graduated from the first time actually had just started a program for the CFP education. So I quit my job and went back to college because why wouldn't you, right?
Of course.
There's more to that story, but it was that with my husband's encouragement. You know, he just said, gosh, you just really love this. It seems like this would be the next step in your career. So I did for about 2 years go back to college, and I got a bachelor's degree in financial planning and sat for the CFP exam. And thank God I passed on the first time.
Yep. I was pretty sure I was not going to retake it if I didn't pass the first time around.
I just remember walking out of my husband was great because he actually drove me up. That was, you know, for those that are newer and taking the exam back in the good old days when we had a 10-hour exam, 2 days. And he was and only in certain locations, you know, so he was kind enough to drive me to where the exam was being taken up in Buffalo. And it happened to be on St. Patrick's Day weekend. So that was pretty interesting in the hotel that evening. But it was, when I walked out on that Saturday, he said I walked out and I looked like, you know, I had no idea where I was. And he was absolutely right. And he said, what do you want to do now? And I said, I don't know, but it's got to be cold and it's got to be liquid. So that was kind of the, you know, the next phase in my life was to, okay, now I've got this degree. I just sat for the exam. What's my next step? And a company that is local, another financial institution, was building their wealth management division, and they happened to broker dealer through Raymond James. So I got my Series 7 and my 66 and started working for them. And the idea behind it was they were trying to grow the financial planning specifically. Things changed in the business model. I was there for about 5 years and really was getting more and more and more towards the growing the assets so much more than the financial planning. And I really was struggling with where I wanted to go next. And one of the local firms that was fee only, he's an RIA and he is SEC registered. I reached out to him and just said, would you ever consider, you know, bringing me on board? I know you don't necessarily have a job, but, you know, if you would, I would be interested in working for you. And he took me up on it. So I started working for him in 2011 and was both the director of financial planning for him as well as the chief compliance officer, which I love doing, which most people right there stop the conversation and say, wait, you liked the compliance side of it? It's because
a little different.
I know. It's because it has rules. And we don't have the opportunity in our career really often to say, okay, that's done. You know, when we're working with clients, often it takes years and years and years and years to build the done part. So the compliance side of it for me was, okay, I checked that box. I did this. So it gave me a sense of completion above and beyond the planning side of working with clients. So I enjoyed it. And in 2014 was a real change of life sort of situation. My husband and I both lost uncles that were very close to us. And my uncle was my husband's age. And it was just a very traumatic year. And it made us take stock of, are we really valuing and doing the things in life that mean the most to us? So two crazy kids sat down and said, you know, what would life look like if we could just plan it? You know, we could say this is what it looked like. And we said, we'd love to spend our winters in Florida and our summers in New York and figure out what to do in between. And so I approached the gentleman that owned the firm that I was working for, and I said, hey, you know, we have a lot of clients. We have a lot of snowbird clients that go down to Florida. What would you think about me working part-time down there during the year, and especially in the winter, and then, you know, working up here in the summer? Oh, and by the way, I'd really love to be working with some younger folks. You know, it's neat to work with all of these group of people, but I would really love to start working with people that are my age group in their 40s. That's, you know, something that would be challenging and exciting, and I understand their pain and their experiences. And he listened politely and said, you know, I just don't think that's a direction that I want to take my business. So we thought long and hard about it and began doing some real saving because we could see that it wasn't in his plan, and so it needed to be in ours. And in early 2015, we approached him and said, we understand that this isn't the direction you want to go, but it's the direction I want to go. So we talked through some things, and I had a group of clients that had followed me from the prior firm that came, and I was going to spin them off into a separate master. We were with Schwab as far as a custodian. And one of the lessons that I always try to share with people is be real careful with your custodian if you're a breakaway, because some custodians are fine. You're a breakaway, you take your clients, it's not a big deal. Schwab happens to have a policy that says you can break away and you can take your clients and you can stay with Schwab as long as your prior firm allows it. And
oh, interesting. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. And initially we were all on board. That was what was going to happen. So, all my clients knew what was going on. We were going to break away and we were going to stay with Schwab, and it wasn't a big deal. And unfortunately, right before that was to happen, the gentleman at the prior firm said, I don't think so. So I had to put that on hold, if you want to say. I was no longer with the firm, and all of my clients still were with the firm that I was previously with. And I had to be vetted by a new custodian. So this is where I give TD a plug, because they really busted their hump to get me vetted pretty quickly so that I could get my clients converted from an old, my old firm to my new firm. But it took a good 4 months to get me vetted on their platform, and all of my clients moved over. So there was a 4-month window where there was no revenue.
Wow. And that's just, I'm shocked that Schwab would have that policy. I can't think of a good reason. I understand, I've heard that they'll say, if you don't have enough assets, if you're spending off $2 million, you just can't stay on their platform or whatnot, and you have to transition away. But I've never heard of just like them telling an advisor no because your prior firm doesn't like that you left. Like, that means like 90% of people that are breaking away are not going to stay on their platform.
It was hard. It was a very emotional time for me. Even just talking about it today, it brings out some emotions that are tucked away in this hidden little spot. And it's, all of my clients they felt it was stressful for them as much as it was stressful for me not being able to see their accounts. And if everybody can just think back to like August of 2015 when we kind of had that flash crash, well, I didn't have access to any of my clients' information during that period of time. So, here my clients are, asking me questions, and I couldn't answer them. And that to me was one of the most, when I ask people what keeps them up at night, I laid awake at night trying to think, what can I do differently? What is it how can I make this less stressful for my clients? So that's a little lesson that I, share.
So after this transition, which was beyond stressful, it sounds like, sort of, what did the business look like at that point? How many clients were you able to bring with you to sort of kick things off as you were getting started?
So we had about 35 clients that made the transition with us. I feel super, super honored about that, because all of the clients that were under my initial transition plan came with me and stayed with me. So I felt really honored that they took that risk with me.
And like you said, I mean, it's stressful for them as well, watching this transition and not knowing what's going on. And my dad always says there's 3 sides to every story, my side, your side, and the truth. And so I imagine from a client's perspective, there's sort of this unknown of what in the world is going on. But it is awesome that they stuck it out with you and trusted you to, make that transition. So at this point, you have partnered with the other firm in Florida for a short while. And that was sort of when you brought your clients over. And then remind me again, what was the time frame between then and when you went out with your own RIA?
So it was in May of 2015 that the partnership formed, and it was about November that Ken and I started talking about, this is, I guess, a little bit of a lesson. When we were forming the partnership, we talked a lot about our philosophy on how to treat clients, but what we didn't talk about is the roles that we should take as partners. As the partnership continued to grow, we learned that that was a key piece that we should have spent some time talking about. And like I said, it was just something that we could realize amongst each other that was going to create a problem down the road if we continued to be true partners. So we decided at that point in time to maybe become collaborators. So I would step away and form this new Irvine Wealth Planning Strategies, and he would continue to have the partnership. And so we actually began working on that in December of 2015. So that thankfully, was friendly and there wasn't any issues there. But I did have to go back to all 35 of those clients and say, look, I need you to sign this new LPA. I'm forming this new company. This is what is going on between myself and the partnership. And, that raised a little bit of an eyebrow on a few of my clients, and they asked some questions, and they should, that was like, wow, that was a short-lived partnership. But all of them, again, had a lot of courage is what I say, and stuck with me. And I did form an advisory board at that point in time because I thought, all right, I need to get a feel of what's going on in my clients' minds. They've had two really traumatic, one super traumatic and another one where I'm coming to them and saying, oh yeah, this partnership that I formed, the one that, was caused all this animosity of transferring accounts. No, not going to be a partner anymore. Just going to go off on my own. So
yeah, it's a tough conversation to have.
It's probably one of the toughest things I've ever done. And I had a great group of clients that really were honest with me, gave me some feedback. And the advisory board said, if you're going to do this, this is how you should do it. And so I followed their recommendations. So that was in early 2016. And after that transition, we just exploded. Oh my gosh, we grew in 2016. We grew from, by the end of 2015, what we transitioned over was 40 clients. We grew to 82 clients by the end of 2016.
Whoa.
So
42 clients in 12 months?
It was a wild ride.
Where in the world were they coming from? Just previous contacts and that sort of thing?
It was referrals. It was previous contacts. It was friends that, just didn't know how to work with me before because of the firms that I worked with and where the minimums were. It was every which direction. And we didn't have time to breathe. We just went with it.
Yeah, that's just shy of one a week, one new client a week, which, most advisory firms are thrilled with one or two new clients a month. 43 in a year is just incredible. But you said we. So who at that time was working in your firm? Did you have some other team members or staff that were helping you with managing these 43 new client relationships in addition to the existing 40 you already had?
Yes, my husband.
Okay.
So he is not an advisor, but he was by my side every step of the way, helping with all the administrative aspects of things. So when I refer to the we and that discussion, that's who I'm referring to. So he basically stood by my side every day and said, okay, what can I do? What can I take on? What forms need to be sent to TD? What paperworks, do I need to call clients on? What needs to be sent out in the mail? What needs to be scanned? He just was a real trooper and helped me grow this practice exponentially. It wasn't until we had a chance to breathe in early 2017 that we said, well, maybe we should actually bring on an admin.
Don't you love that when you're in the middle of it, basically chaos is what it feels like when you're in the middle of that type of growth. You don't even have time to think about hiring because how in the world are you supposed to interview anyone when you're working with, you bring on a new client every week and having to do the planning?
Yeah. And there was a lot of lost sleep. There was a lot of nights that I was up, working on things, I'm a pretty early morning riser anyways, but a lot of mornings where I was in my office working on things at 4:30 in the morning. And that wasn't the lifestyle that we planned to live when we started talking about this practice. And so for people that are hearing these numbers and saying, man, that's what I want to do, I'm saying, no, you don't.
No. It's not true. Yeah. And that's because it creates its own problems, right? So like when you're not growing fast enough, obviously that's something that is a challenge, but when you're growing as fast as you were, you end up doing one of two things. Either you never sleep or exercise or see your friends. Fortunately, you were able to see your husband since you were working together. That's one that can be, easily put to the side when you're growing that fast. But the other piece is just, it's expensive. I mean, it costs money because you've got to hire, and I'm amazed at how you've been able to scale, because you added an admin. Have you added anybody else to the team at this point?
No, but we are looking and talking about how to add a virtual paraplanner. I spent quite a bit of time one of the evenings at the conference talking to a couple people about that and seeking out the next, step in that particular direction. That's something that we've spent a lot of time talking about. I have trust issues, and I'm willing to admit it. And so, so it's challenging for me to let go and trying to find that right person to let go to, and making sure that I communicate well with that individual. I think that's a piece of my issues of letting go is that, okay, well, what if I don't tell them the right thing or tell them the right way? And then they go through and do all this work, and I'm like, oh, that's not really what, the client wanted or needed, or what I wanted or needed. So part of it is trusting my communication skills, or working on my communication skills, and finding the right person to drag the information out of me a little bit. So we're working on that. That is definitely in the plans. I've done the math. I'm like, I need to bring on 6 clients to just pay for the person. But, am I willing to take a little bit of a pay cut to actually, make that decision until we're able to bring that on? And it's, we're in that chicken and egg kind of stage, like what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do we take a haircut and just say, okay, we're going to do this, and then it'll just by nature come, or, but I'm confident that if I can, make that right hire, and I have that trust in my communication and their communication, that it'll be, I won't say easy, but doable to go out and add that additional, client that I need to every 2 months, to even just pay for their salary. So that's our plan.
I think that's huge. No, it's great because, one, you added 43 clients last year. Are you on pace to add 43 clients this year, or has it slowed at least a little bit? It's
slowed. Yeah. So this year we've been about 1 a month. Well,
okay.
One a month on the recurring side. We've done 18 in total. So, some are annual clients, some are people that are coming to me and they just want that annual review. And so we've added 10 in that nature. And then on the recurring side, people that meet with me, quarterly, or in some cases a little bit more than that, depending on what's going on in their life. That's on the 8 side. So that's slowed a little more controllably, but even that, when you're looking at 18, that's where I think the paraplanner would have been huge for me this year, because those 10 clients that are looking to do some annual work, those folks really could have had a great relationship with a paraplanner, and that would have made a huge difference, I think, in what I was trying to do with those folks. But so, the reoccurring end of things is about 1 a month. So I guess you could say a little over 1 a month on the annual side, but they come in waves. It's like,
yep, they never show up. They never trickle in on an even basis. That would be too easy.
Yeah, August was a little bit on the quiet side. Part of that was because I was traveling. We went down to Florida for a week to see some clients down there, and then of course the conference. So it was a little bit on the slower side, but we did add 2 new clients in the month of October. That's what helped us cross that line to the 100. And like I said, the goal is around 1 every other month. That is the goal. So 6 a year at this stage of the game would be ideal, because at some point in time, maybe some of those annuals aren't going to come back, so the idea would be to get to around 125 total and just kind of be there, or add staff, another advisor or something along those lines.
All right. I want to definitely dig into that, because that's going to be huge. I want to go back, though, to talk about the paraplanner, and that it's going to take 6 clients to pay for the salary. And I love doing this because we do this a lot at XY Planning Network. When you're adding someone that is either revenue producing, just their position produces revenue for the company, or they free you up in a very direct way to produce revenue for the company. And I love doing, because a lot of times people will sit and go, oh, I'm going to have to pay this person $20,000 or whatever that number is. But let's just say it's $20,000. I can't afford $20,000. It's too much money. And we get so wrapped up on that. And when you take a step back and go, okay, well, it's going to be 6 clients. It's so much more doable, and it just seems so, and you're like 6 clients, that's like 6 months or 2 months if it was last year. I mean, it's a smaller time frame, but it's not like you're adding 6 clients and that's all they do, right? You're able to add significantly more clients and leverage that person and provide a better service to your clients and all of those things by having this person. So it takes 6 clients to pay their salary, and then everything else after that for this person is icing on the cake for you. And it's all leveraged benefit, which is awesome.
Right. So the idea behind that so let me just kind of get into the math behind how I came up with the 6 clients. So for reoccurring clients in my business, I don't charge assets under management. I just have a flat fee that I charge to clients. And there's three different levels that they can pay me. One is at $2,600. And that, if that's how they want to hire me, that's for the financial planning aspects of it. That's any financial question that they might have, but the investment management is either done through their own hands or I work with First Ascent. So one or the other. So I don't actively get involved in the asset management side at that level. I might, I'd make recommendations on where they should put their assets, but I'm not the one physically managing them.
Okay.
And then the second level that I have, which is at $5,000, that one is me managing the dollars. So you want to hire Amy Irvine, to manage your assets. We're going to bump your fee up to $5,000. And then the third level that I have is what I call the family plan. So you want to hire Amy and you want Amy to do planning for your kids too. That's an $8,400 a year level. So there's not a separate fee for the kids to actually work with me. I do have a number of hours that I, coordinate with this, but it's that one I find that some of my clients that are a little bit more established, a little bit older, they want their kids to take financial planning on at a very early age, but the kids are, in a position where maybe it's a little cost prohibitive for them to do that. So that's kind of the 3 ways that I get paid, and then I do some project work and some hourly, but I really try to focus on the reoccurring side of things. So my thought is if I can take my middle of the road and I can add 6 clients at that middle of the road, that $5,000 level, that's $30,000 a year, right? So if I can find a paraplanner that wants to work, maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 hours a week, that's going to give them, and maybe they're doing some other, they're working with another advisor as well. That's going to give them a decent, at least partially a decent income, and maybe it can be a training ground for somebody to see what a process looks like even, and earn a little money at the same time.
Sure.
And that's kind of how I backed into it to say, I need 6 clients at this level to pay for a $30,000 paraplanner for, 20 hours a week, basically.
Okay. That was it. Yeah. So it's going to be part-time at 30,000. So that's $30 an hour essentially.
Correct.
And then, so of the 100 clients that you have today, so you sort of have these 3 levels of services, what's the breakdown of sort of clients per service? Are the majority of them in one of the 3, or are they pretty evenly spread out?
I have a fair number that are in the $2,600 range so let me kind of back up. There were about 35 originally. They were all AUM, and I'm working on transitioning them, right? So,
Gotcha.
So I'm working on getting them all up to that level, and some of them weren't quite paying that yet. So, because they were so loyal and staying with me, I didn't have the ability to actually say to them, thanks for sticking with me through all these transitions. And by the way, you got to pay more.
Time to raise the fee.
So I left their schedule as is. And as they get closer to that mark, then I will put them, I'll grandfather them basically into that level. New clients coming on board are the ones that are actually falling into this. So my average per client right now is somewhere in the neighborhood of around $2,000 per client.
Okay. So now your lowest tier is 2,600, but you have just the legacy clients and that sort of thing is pulling that average down.
It is. And to be honest with you, that is the 4th fee schedule in a year and a half.
The fourth, okay.
The fourth revision. And I'm not even talking since 2015. I'm talking since early 2016. I made all the classic mistakes when I launched. I didn't think I could charge, certain amounts. And so I started at one fee schedule. And I think that was a piece of why the growth was so massive in 2016 too, because my fee schedule was, for most people, they fell into what at that point in time was a $2,000 flat fee schedule. And that's another reason why it kind of averages out to be that. So after the fourth revision, which is what you're seeing right now, that's, I think, what helped slow down the growth a little bit as well. But, that needed to happen, right? I couldn't continue at that pace. So that schedule that I mentioned to you, we are not anywhere near that. And the result of that fee schedule was because of a conversation that Arlene and Brent and I had. So we hired Arlene at the beginning of 2017 to do a quarter worth of coaching. And she made us sit down and actually look at what the hourly rate each client was paying. And that was an interesting process.
That's when you realize what you're really charging.
And there was one particular client that I saw it and I went, oh my gosh, I was getting paid like $4 an hour. And I didn't even want to show her that because I was so embarrassed by it. And, here I am, this person who thinks, she's really good at numbers, and I hadn't realized what had happened. So we made some changes at that point in time. And I will say, for anybody who's thinking around the fence of hiring a coach, when you're paying somebody $400 a month, you follow the guidance that they give you.
It's true. No, it's absolutely true. And it's interesting because at the XYPN 17 conference, we announced some of the results of our benchmarking survey, this is the first year we've ever done a benchmarking survey. We will continue to do it every year going forward, but it is available free to members. And then we're setting up the ability for non-members to be able to purchase it. But one of the striking things was that 100% of our advisors that have been in business for at least 3 years have raised their fees. 100%. I mean, across the board, everyone raises their fees. And you can look at that two ways. I mean, you can look at that and go, oh, they're getting better. They're charging more. But I don't think so. I think we're looking at it and we're saying, you know what? People are undercharging in their first years and they're just not charging enough. And I get it. It's very difficult to charge what you're actually worth. But my encouragement, and it sounds like this is the piece that you've seen too, is you've got to come out, I think, a little stronger in the pricing. And we, just because we've promoted being, an advisor that can work with Gen X and Gen Y clients and not have asset minimums doesn't mean you need to be working for $35 a month. We're not advocating for a losing strategy here. You can make great money and have great margins and all of those things and charge what you're worth and charge based on the value you're providing. But 100% of advisors raise their fees. And I think that's telling that we need to do a better job of encouraging new firms to just come out a little stronger on the pricing, recognizing that, if they don't, they're going to end up raising their fees. And honestly, raising fees is tough, especially when you're raising fees 3 or 5% every year. No big deal. Raising fees 50% because you realized how severely undercharging you were. That's a tough conversation.
Or like in my case, in some cases, 200%.
200%.
Yeah, because I came in so low in some situations that, that was some of the problem, right? So when I talk to some of the new planners that are starting their business and they're like, I charge $500 a year. I'm like, do not do that. Let me tell you what I'm going through. You want to have a hard conversation? Talk to a client about fees. And about raising their fees from $500 a year to $2,000 a year or $2,600 a year. I'd rather poke my eye out than do that.
It's so true.
So it's fun and funny, I guess, in that respect, but it is the hardest conversation. My study group is really good about this too, because we've had this conversation about all of us. Everybody in my study group has had this conversation about not charging the group enough. So your point about starting out of the gate, not having enough confidence in ourselves to charge enough, everybody in both of my study groups have had this conversation. And recently we've really been holding each other accountable to have these conversations. And, we're all over the country like everybody else's study group is probably, but they're threatening to come, we all are threatening to come and like sit with each other and have these conversations with our clients just to push each other a little bit. And the thing is I think we would.
Oh yeah. Well, and it's a lot easier for me to come sit in your meeting and make you charge more than it is for me to charge more. So it's this joint accountability thing that it's, it is nice to have that person saying they're going, you are worth more than what you're charging. And, ultimately, and you're seeing some of the repercussions from undercharging, that it's not simply a tough conversation. It's also lost revenue because, your average is $2,000 a client. You want it to be higher than that. And it's a slow process. So it's going to take a year or two of lost, money coming in and honestly, it's not like you're going to be providing any additional work, taking any additional time to provide the value. So it really is just money out of your pocket. And so that is part of what happens. And so I agree with you. It's if you're going to come out of the gate undercharging, give yourself a limit. Like I will take, if you're going to do some stupidly low number, like $500, like, okay, but for 10 clients or 7 clients, get that pricing. And then after that, double your fees.
Yeah. I would definitely agree with that because that's part of our struggle right now is that we're trying to figure out how to bring everybody into that fair zone, right? And so this is the conversation that I had with a client recently about raising her fees. And I said, we'll transition it over time. We'll do, like $250 each quarter was what we'll raise it by so that it takes some time to get you up to a decent level. But in the feedback that I got was, well, I knew I was underpaying you, but, I still don't like a fee increase. Like, yep. Okay, well, she said, I just don't want to pay you more, but I know that you're worth it. And I'm like, okay, I guess. And when I told my study group this, they're like, really? That's what she said? I'm like, I couldn't make this stuff up, right? But you're absolutely right when you make that comment about if I'm going to charge $500 just to get myself going, set a limit on what you're going to charge. I wish somebody had given me that advice because I really think that is something that I really don't like to talk about fees. If there is one piece of my business that I wish I could turn over to somebody talking about fees. And Arlene has been great with some of that conversation and self-talk, but she said, you're just too nice sometimes. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's true. I am. I'd give the clothes off my back to some people sometimes. And I have to remember there's a difference now between working in the business and working on the business. And in order to be successful with my existing clients and make sure that I'm fair across the board with my time and my energy and the services that I'm giving, I really do need to charge them reasonable fees across the board. So it's easy for me to say that. It's not as easy to implement it. That's why I always say to people, oh yeah, it looks all shiny from the outside, but there's a few scratches that maybe are hidden under the surface, that aren't as clear as they might be.
Yeah, and I think Kitsis is the one who has said this in the past. I may be misquoting who has said this. I wish I could take credit for it. And that is that if you undercharge for long enough, you will not be in business to take care of your clients. Mm-hmm. If you try to stick with this, you're at 100 clients and you're already feeling the pain that you need some additional staff. You already have some staff. If you're charging $500 or $1,000 per client, you just can't make it. There's just not enough money there. You've got to charge enough to run a real business so that you and your team are around and have jobs long enough to actually do this. So, while it is uncomfortable to talk about fees and raising fees and all of those things, it does have to be a business decision. And I recognize that's easier said than done, but still necessary.
And also your own life. That's one of the things. Brianna Raish at the conference, she was standing to the right of me when somebody asked the question of how many clients I had, and I said it, and she said, how big, of a staff do you have? And I just smiled and I said, well, I've got a part-time. And I've got my husband works with me part-time, and she said, you're the only advisor and you don't have a paraplanner? And she was the energy that she brings to the table anyway. Yep. And she said, self-love, girl, self-love, and she said, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire. You need help. And she was a hoot and a half. Every time she'd see me, we'd pass, walking in the hall or something like that, she'd say, paraplanner, paraplanner. So she keeps posting little notes to me and kind of
love it.
ask the question in the Facebook page about what was the one takeaway or something. And I said, somebody told me I needed to hire a paraplanner. So, I mean, she was encouraging and her energy is always amazing, but her point was very valid. And sometimes when you hear it from somebody else, it reinforces it. But it is true that you can't run a practice with 50 people charging, 50 clients charging $500 and expect your life not to change if you don't raise your fees. And just talking from experience, you will get burnout. And I've had my moments where as I said to you when we first started talking before, I think the recording, my husband says I don't have an off switch, I just have a dimmer. Well, the dimmer got pretty dim a few times.
I can imagine.
There were just moments.
If you're charging that little, I mean, you have to be motivated to show up to work. And it's like, well, if I could go to Wendy's and work behind a cash register and make more money, like it's kind of hard to get motivated because there's no scale, right? There's no way to scale that. One of the interesting things that you said was, 125 clients. Is that based on a revenue number that you want to be at? Are you sort of backing into that number, or is it more of just sort of your capacity limit and you'll make as much money as you can working with that many clients?
It's a combination. The idea when I first started the practice was I don't need to be rich. I just want to be comfortable. And I want to have a good life. As I mentioned to you back in 2014 when we had the life-changing moments of loss of close family, that was one of the conversations that we had is what do we need to do to enjoy life? We don't know what's in the cards for us. So how do we do that? And one of the major things was we wanted to spend time where it was warm in the winter. We wanted to spend time in this beautiful Finger Lakes area in the summer. And so what is it going to take to have a comfortable life, not as busy as it has been the last couple of years, but yet be able to have good relationships with clients and enjoy spending time with them as much as we enjoy what we're doing on our private time. So we kind of came up with a number. We did the math and said, if we can have 125 clients averaging around $2,500 per client, that's a pretty darn comfortable life, allowing us to save for retirement, save for emergencies, save for some of our travel that we want to do, pay for some staff. And then we can look and see what we want to do from there with the business. What's the next stage? Do we want to leave it at that and have, some great staff members that we're taking care of? Or do we want to grow the business bigger? Do we want to add additional advisors? And that brings a whole level of complexity, right? So
right.
When you start adding on additional advisors, there's additional compliance considerations that have to be taken into consideration. We're not there yet, and I try not to let that fold into my focus right now. One of the study groups that I belong to, it's called Charlie's Angels. We just recently all went through a 1, 3, and 5-year business plan with each other. So we all shared that with each other and asked questions and really dug into the details of each other's business plans. And one of the things that I really felt comfortable doing at this stage of the business plan was forming collaborative relationships with other advisors. So instead of growing it in staff-wise, looking at people that have expertise in certain areas and saying, okay, for example, Nanette, you have this really great niche that you're focusing on of college planning. If I have a client that comes to me and they need college planning as a part of their financial plan, I'm going to ask them if it's okay if we collaborate on that piece together, because it makes my life a little easier. I don't have to have that expertise in that particular area, but I can add a lot of value in other areas that I'm knowledgeable about. So that, that's an example of where I'm getting at. And what that does for me is avoid having to make the decision right now of hiring additional staff members, but it does also make me feel like I have, this resource that I can go to that's smarter than me on a particular topic.
So one of the other areas that you seem to be focused on is, and you have to be focused on this given your client load and the fact that you're the only advisor, and that is sort of just day-to-day task management and sort of structure. So tell me a little bit about how you structure your week so that you can stay on top of all of these meetings and everything that you've got going on.
So part of this was in working with Arlene too, and I had already started this a little bit before I started working with her, but really honed in on it. It was haphazard. In 2016, again, it was catch as catch can, right? So 2017, we sat down and said, how do we manage this? How do we make this differently or work, basically? And I said, Mondays really, I just need to get control of the week. So I'm not going to schedule any appointments on Mondays. Mondays is my prep day, my planning day, my due diligence day. That's the day that I'm going to prepare myself for the week. And I shared that with all of my clients. So I said to them, look, I'm not going to take any appointments on Monday. Monday is my get prepared day. It's the opportunity for me to really think. And I'm going to work from home when I'm in New York. I'm going to see clients on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then Friday is my catch-up day. So Friday is the day that I take everything that I couldn't get done for the most part, and I either get it done or I put it on my calendar for another part of the week or weeks in advance when I know that I'm going to have some focused time to work on it. And so I also shared that with my clients and saying that, I'll make an exception occasionally, but it's got to be an emergency. Monday's off the table. I will not take appointments on Monday, but Friday I will make an exception if it's an emergency. And recently what we've discussed is for people that are working still, which that particular portion of my business is really growing, what if we said instead of having a 5 or 5:30 or 6 o'clock appointment, what if we picked one Saturday a month and said, hey, we're going to meet with clients that day so that they're getting me fresh instead of, a 6 o'clock appointment after I've been up at 4:30 in the morning. I worry about my brain's capacity a little bit. So what if we switched that up and said, I know that that's one Saturday a month, but I would feel better about it because I would just feel like they're getting a cleaner brain, and then I wouldn't have to work quite as late, some of those nights during the week. So I stick to that schedule, and I find that if I veer from it, like last week when we had a holiday, I just pay for it all week. It's just not worth it.
Right.
For me it's not worth it to the clients, and it's not worth it to me personally or physically. So I stick to that structure pretty faithfully now, and it has made both the practice and my life a lot more enjoyable.
I think that's awesome. And it's something I'm trying to get better at just as we grow and establishing meetings and especially when you're going to be doing regular meetings every week. And when you do those and all of that, it's a real challenge, but it's something, again, I need to get better at because I end up spending a lot of time, going back and forth on when to schedule. It'd be a lot easier if I could just say, hey, Friday is my podcast recording day. So like if you want to, I have Fridays available, let me know the next one you're available and we'll make it work, as opposed to when are you free this week? And here you and I are recording on a Saturday because this was when we were both free. So, but I like some people do time blocking and you get really specific. Like I always record it Thursday at 3:30 p.m. for podcasts. I don't know that that's necessary, but giving some structure to it, I think is huge. One of the things that you were involved in at the conference was sitting on or being a part of the diversity panel that was hosted by our diversity committee, which you also serve on at the XYPN 17 conference. And one of the things that you brought up, and you're pretty well known for this inside the network, is the focus on mentorship. So can you tell me a little bit about, maybe a little bit about where that passion came from, and then some of the work you're doing, and finally what other advisors can do if they sort of buy into this concept of mentorship and the positive effects that it can have?
Well, I'll start with the positive effects because I think that maybe that might convince some of the folks out there that are thinking about doing it or haven't thought about doing it. It is as rewarding for me as it is for the person I think that is, on the other side. I learn so much every time I meet a new person and start mentoring a new person. They bring something new to the table. And so I always look forward to that beginning stage. And then as we work together, we learn from each other. And the reason that I started doing it is because I simply never had it. So, I came up in this industry at a period of time that we think 15% or 16% of women in this field is low now. Well, when I first started out, it was like 13, maybe not even, it was super low. I'd have to look at the statistics from 1994, but, I've joked with this in the diversity committee. When I first started in this industry, I used to go to conferences and I never had to worry about waiting in line when I had to use ladies' room. And now I actually, I actually had to wait for a few seconds at the XYPN conference. It was exciting.
And that's such a win when we see women waiting for a bathroom. We're like, yes, finally.
That sounds silly, but it really is very exciting for me to see that. And so I never had anybody that said, you might want to think about this, or what about this, or what about that. It was always this uphill challenge of, I am somebody that has some knowledge and experience, and I'm not sitting, in the room because I'm somebody's spouse or because I'm an admin, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that either, but it just was always such a challenge for me. And so about 5 years ago, I think it was through the college that I graduated at, I went and spoke with their graduating class that year. And when I was talking to there was very few women in the curriculum, and I noticed that it just so stood out to me, and I thought, it's the same thing in college as it is in the industry. It just pains me. And they were searching, they came up to me and they were all talking to me, and I thought, okay, this is a great opportunity for me to change what's out there. Let me take one student and start working with them in their junior year. Let me help them through that stage of what do I even want to do an internship with, or what are my options? Because in college, you get the opportunity to learn a lot of the financial planning stuff that we need to know, the books, but nobody takes you by the hand and says, watch out for this, or look for this, or these are the different business models. Nothing is right or wrong, just understand what you're getting into. And when you go for those internship interviews, ask these questions and explore this. I just didn't have that. So I started doing that, I think it was about 5 years ago, and it's been incredible. And all these young women that I've had the chance to work with are now, in their careers, and they're doing wonderfully. And we've talked about what to say when we feel that, they're being underpaid or underappreciated, or even, looking for opportunities. And I have one in particular, individual that I've mentored, and she's now working in a job that all I can say is I'm just so proud of her. I'm just so excited for where her career is going, right? And when we get together, now it's not a relationship, a mentor-mentee relationship. It's just a colleague, right? And she and I are actually doing education things together. So in fact, next Thursday, we have a class that we're doing for the community on student loans, and she's representing the Generation Y and I'm representing the Generation X. And so we're doing it as a collaborative event. And it's just, how can you not feel excited about that? And then taking it into the next level of, okay, we've got some career changers out there. We've got some women that are making these career changes. So no, they're not young, maybe in age, like I'm, dealing with college students, but they're young in their business. And oh my gosh, let me save you from some of these mistakes that I've made.
Yeah.
Share some ideas with you and coach you and see if there's some things that, I can help you with or give you advice on, or people I can introduce you to. I mean, there's one benefit of being around the rodeo for a few years in the sense of, your career is that you can say, oh, who you should talk to is this person. So that has been a huge reward for me. And, it's been something that the more I do it, the more excited I am about it. And for other people that are interested in doing it and just don't know how to start it, I don't know that there's a perfect answer or a science behind it, but I think it's just sharing. That's what I found. Like, I don't have any secret sauce to it or anything like that, but it's just asking, like, what is it that you're excited about? What do you love to do? There's a young woman that I'm working with that's part of XYPN right now. And as we were talking about what she loved to do, what gets her really excited and passionate about becoming a financial advisor and how she was going to kind of use that skill set to grow her business, she realized that what she had in her business plan was nothing like what she loved to do.
Mm.
And so as we talked about how do we change that, because she said, all these things that are in my business plan are the traditional things that people do to grow their business. And I said, yeah, but doesn't it make sense to do something you're passionate about to grow your business?
And how amazing to catch that now instead of later on. As I've talked about in previous episodes, it's very easy to build a business that you hate and to build the wrong business. So any recommendations on sort of structure of meetings, like how often you typically meet with your mentees? Is it weekly, monthly, quarterly, and then sort of in between emails and that sort of thing?
Yeah. So the young woman that I'm working with, that's an XYPN member, she and I meet on a biweekly basis right now. Some of the relationships are more monthly with a lot of emails in between. And it depends. Sometimes we make it more frequently based on what's going on in their lives. So I try to get a feel for what their needs are, and we set the schedule based on that. It's just, to me, it's sort of like your study group. How often do you need to be held accountable? Is it monthly? Is it semi-monthly? What are your needs? And how often and effectively can we communicate via email? One of the things that I struggle with when it comes to email is not always understanding the tone behind it. The question that kind of comes up sometimes. It's easier to talk through what the struggle is versus trying to email each other back and forth because I might not catch the emotion that's behind the question. So it's nice to ask a technical question that way and to point people in the right direction. But a lot of times for me, it's easier to hear what's going on or see what's going on with the person visually, body language, and their voice, and then be able to figure out how much time we need to spend on it and then how frequently we have to meet. So I think it depends on the situation. I think it's like financial planning. It's what's going on in the person's life and what their need is and what your time available is,
Sure. No, that's a great point because your mentee probably has more time than you do. So it's just reality of where you get in your business. So Amy, I'm going to switch up my final question just a little bit for you based on the fact that you have done so much mentoring and that sort of thing. So instead of asking you what piece of advice you would give yourself, I want to know the best piece of advice that you give your mentees. Like, what do you think the most impactful piece of advice you give your mentees is?
Well, it's not original, but the question that I always ask first is, what is your why? Tell me your why. So defining your why is what I would say to them. Knowing why you're doing this, why you got into business to do this, who you like to work with, and why it's going to help you have a more fulfilling life.
I love it because I think that, again, it's something too often we forget to ask ourselves that and update it over time because things, life changes and things change and it's okay to adapt and to evolve. But it's a lot easier to make decisions when you have a framework to make those decisions inside of. Because if you say your why is to help a lot of people and you want to make $60,000 a year, well, you can make a lot of different business decisions than if your why is, that you want to have a big impact and make $100,000 or $200,000. It's not all about income, but, answering those questions, I guess having that framework for yourself definitely helps as you're trying to make business decisions.
Yeah, we've talked about that in our study group as well. That was one of the reasons that we recently went through that process, was because we got on this topic one day about shiny things syndrome.
The shiny objects. Yeah. We love to chase them.
and we were talking about our tech stack and, how we were like, oh, look at that. Look at what that does. And then we use it and then we don't use it. And then it sits there and we're paying for it. And so that's actually how the conversation started. And as we went through that business plan, we had to all define our why. And now I have it in the front of a book that I carry. And every time something really cool comes up and I think, oh, that would be something that would be fun to do or fun to add. I look at that and I think, okay, does that fit into my why? Or is it something that is just, the squirrel that's distracting me from my focus? And I think at the conference, it was really neat to watch the tech competition, because as soon as the student loan folks were talking about their platform, opened up my virtual book, as I call it, and I looked down through and I said, oh yeah, this one fits into my why. And it's only $36 per client per year. I can handle that.
That's awesome.
And we talked about that this past Friday in our study group. We talked about what we liked about the tech competition and if there was anything that we were going to add and how it fit into our why. But that is the one piece of advice that I would give to anybody that's considering starting a practice, because one of the things that I have found is a very common response to that is that, well, I just couldn't find what I was looking for. And that's why I started this practice. And so I've begun to challenge that a little bit, because I think there's enough of us in the network at this point in time that, we're starting to get established and we're starting to have this thought that goes through our head of what do we do next? And so can we work with some of these folks that are looking at the network, and would that be a better direction? Instead of them starting their own practice, would there be a better formula that can be developed instead of starting your own practice? Because anybody that's listening, it is tough. There were so many moments where I was questioning why did I do this? And I know why. I mean, I know why I did it, but it was so hard. And it's now starting to get to the stage of rewarding. But if anybody is thinking about it and they read our stories, for those of us that have grown and think, wow, that's what I want to do. One of the things that I always just want to say to them is there are pros and cons, and there are moments that are really difficult, and you just have to understand that that's part of the process, and, also look at the successes that come with it.
Right.
It's tough.
It's the emotional roller coaster that we talk about, and we're not kidding. I just don't know of a better way of saying, it's a tough road. It's rewarding. And I thought it was worth it, and I still do. You thought it was worth it, and you still do. But it's not for everybody. And there are better, there's a path for everyone. And entrepreneurship is a great one for a lot of people, and it's not great for others. So, well, Amy, thank you so very much for taking the time to come onto the show and share, your path and how things are going. I'm so excited to see your firm continue to grow and all the awesome stuff that you're working on, and also the impact that you're having by being involved as a mentor and really helping, do your part to push the profession forward. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.